It would be very unusual, for instance, to have a star that captures another star or captures a planet. That would be phenomenally difficult to achieve. But what often happens is they form in conjunction with each other. And my really simple hypothesis on this is that the dark star, this little brown dwarf, which is too dark for us to spot, but I'm quite certain it's out there, it formed in this nursery close to the sun and just started off orbiting around it right from the word go. And when it was born, when this sort of Jupiter-like planet, but a bit bigger, was born, it's very similar to what you were saying about Jupiter. It's probably more massive than Jupiter, maybe 5, maybe 10 times more massive than Jupiter, and that was just enough there's just enough mass to create the internal gravity to set reactions going that would produce light. So at the beginning of the solar system, right at the birth, this object would have been visible in the sky, even at a great distance, because it would have been shining really very brightly. But after a few million years, just when the star's just sort of getting going, it's quite young really, it would have used all its fuel up because it's not big enough to sustain it, and it would have gone dark. So the only point where it would have been sort of truly visible as a binary star system would have been right at the beginning in the first 5-10 million years of the solar system. And that's how we know that there's so many brown dwarfs out there, because when astronomers are looking at other stars, when they look into the nebulae and they see the stars forming in the star-forming regions, they often spot these very, very young early brown dwarfs, which are very bright. And from that, they can extrapolate the fact that there are an awful lot of these objects out there. And it seems to me to be highly likely that one of them's orbiting our sun. The only argument against it is, of course, why haven't we spotted it yet?
Yeah, exactly. But we actually might have spotted it if we go back to again a BBC article from August the 20th. The headline reads, "Rare dead star found near Earth," and this is actually a neutron star that astronomers spotted, and they nicknamed it Calvera, I think. I can't remember the entire article now, but I noticed that you had this article up in your news section. Do you think that this is the potential, is the one, so to speak?
Well, these objects aren't particularly easy to spot. So even though they're quite close to us, I think that particular neutron star is like 13 light years away. It won't be in the solar system, but obviously not, because we'd all be talking about it. But it wasn't spotted before now, and you would expect a neutron star that's in the sort of reasonably close vicinity of our sun to be something that's spotted. But of course, these are quite dark objects. So it's well known amongst astronomers, that between here and the closest star, which is Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri in the Centauri system, between here and there is a great possibility of finding brown dwarfs. And it is also known to astronomers that the influence of our sun extends to almost a quarter of that distance. So if you've got a good chance of a brown dwarf being found within 4 light years, a very good chance, better than even odds, and then a quarter of that distance is actually within the influence of the sun, you can start to see that from a sort of even just a statistical basis, there could well be a brown dwarf within the solar system. But I'm arguing something a bit more exciting than that. My argument is that this object is actually reasonably close to us, that it orbits within the boundary of what's called the Oort cloud, which is the comet clouds in the outer solar system, and that it sweeps out an area that makes a sort of gap between the Oort cloud and another band of asteroids and comets, which is known as the Kuiper belt. And between those two zones, this is where I believe this object resides. But in the next few years, they will find it, because they're sending up some excellent equipment which is designed to find brown dwarfs. And I think that if it's out there, it's going to be found in the next few years.
Really?
It's very exciting.
Wow, that's fascinating. Speaking of the orbit of this thing here, or the cycle, is this an ecliptic thing that so it kind of goes in and out of our solar system, or what is the orbit like?
Well, the idea is that certainly from some of the other authors that have discussed this subject is that the dark, what I call the dark star, but what many people term as Planet X, has an elliptical orbit, and it moves around the sun in a very similar way to the comets. So occasionally it will come reasonably close to the sun, if not within the sort of planetary zone as we understand it, which would be quite a sight. I mean, if you can imagine, if you think about, say, Hale-Bopp or Halley's Comet, when they appear in the sky, and they're quite bright white objects. Well, if you can imagine that, but then you think of it as being sort of Jupiter-sized. Mm-hmm. If it were to appear in the solar system, it would have a sort of, it would be a red planet, or purpley red. It would have a huge halo around it, which would be comet-like, which should, sort of extend backwards away from the sun and be blown back by the solar wind. And it would possibly have some other planets with it, which would glitter as well. So it would be an incredible sight. The contention is, and I support this contention up to a point, but the contention is that this dark star, this Planet X, appears periodically in the solar system from its sort of long-distance comet-like orbit. And when it does, it potentially creates havoc in the solar system.
Yeah.
Because, this massive planet suddenly sort of cruises in and lights up the sky. And, the contention is that in ancient times, this thing was seen and became mythologically an extremely important object. It was basically actually called the Lord. It arrived and it took on religious connotations. People considered it to be either the harbinger of catastrophe, cataclysm, doom, or the sort of return of the Lord and salvation and renewal and resurrection. Yeah. So mythologically, it's extremely important, and scientifically, that's possible. It is possible for an object even the size of Jupiter to move through the solar system without disrupting the other planets, such as the size of the space between us and the nearest planet, or the other planets between them. It's a vast area around the sun, and something could move through there without creating sort of long-term changes to the orbits of the planets. So scientifically that's possible, but it's also quite possible that this object doesn't actually come amongst the planets, that it's not actually seen, but that it has an effect on us in other ways. So there are a number of possibilities. The most exciting and interesting, of course, being one that periodically appears in the sky.
Okay, and one thing I wanted to get into here, I don't know if you've been researching or looking at this, but I know that when they sent up the Pioneer 10 and 11, I think it was, that was about something like 30 years ago. And these two are reaching the outer limits, I guess, of our solar system. But there was some kind of surprise, some strange force that actually, I don't know if they prevented these, these sondes from actually reaching further out. Have you looked at this at all?
Yes, the Voyagers particularly. I think the Voyagers themselves have sailed on quite happily, but I think the Pioneers created a little bit of anomaly, and there were a couple of other probes that had the same. One of them was Ulysses. I can't remember the fourth one off the top of my head, but there were several probes which appeared to, actually a bit more than appeared to, the data coming back for them showed that they were slowing down, that they were moving away from the sun at a slower rate than they should have been. And it would appear from that either physics as we know it was wrong, which actually a lot of scientists said. Scientists looking into this problem of the slowing Pioneers said, maybe there's another physical effect going on here that we're not aware of. Or our sun was exhibiting more gravity than it should have been, which is a very interesting idea. And these objects were slowing down, and my contention is, of course, that they were being affected by directly or indirectly by this other body out there, that it was creating an anomalous effect. Now, it could either be an effect, a direct effect, as in the gravitational effect of that body was altering the trajectory of the pioneers, which seems a little bit wild. Or it could be that the extra gravity, or the extra mass of this object, which is an unknown quantity, added into the overall gravity of the solar system, was creating the extra bit of gravity that was pulling them back. So, if you like, if you take the sort of mass of the solar system in entirety, scientists who haven't discovered the dark star yet are simply tossing up all the masses of what's already available here, that we know about. But when you throw in the extra mass of this planet that we don't know about, then the gravity of the entire solar system actually increases, which is enough to pull them back. So this was my argument. But actually there was a second effect which came to light a year or two ago, which in its way, to do with the pioneers and voyagers, which in its way was even more dramatic, and that is that the sun is surrounded by a field, sort of electromagnetic field, and this field, it sort of subtends out to the point where its solar wind, the sort of driven particles, high energy particles that are driven off the sun by its sort of nuclear explosions, they rush through the solar system, and the field that's created by this activity extends, I think it's about 80 times the distance from the Earth to the sun, so what's called 80 astronomical units. And it creates a natural barrier around the sun called the heliopause. Now this barrier was traversed by these probes recently. And what was discovered, because unfortunately not an awful lot of data can come back from these things, but it's just enough to figure out where they are. What was discovered was that the heliopause, the sheath that lies around the sun, was not uniform. It was not sort of broadly circular, well, broadly spherical. It was not exactly spherical, but it was misshapen. And this caused another bit of a stir in the astronomical community, because although there were only a few data points from each of the probes, they were indicating that this sheath, this heliopause, was not the right shape. And again, you have to ask, it's another anomaly that's presented recently, you have to ask, what on earth could be creating that effect? What on earth could be reshaping the solar system at such a great distance? So again, it's another sort of piece of evidence that suggests that there's something out there that we're not aware of at this time.
Do you have any idea where it might be now, and how far away it is from us?
I've got my own idea of where it is now, far away it is, and there are other researchers in the field who have slightly different ideas, and I'm not really in the business of saying I definitely know where it is, but my favoured place is that it's in the area of the constellation Sagittarius, and I sort of give my reasons at reasonable length in the book, really, but there are a number of reasons for that. One of them is astronomical anomalies that have appeared in the last few decades that sort of indicate that there might be something in that direction. And another thing is the myth of the reappearance of the planet, or the dark star, or the huge comet, or whatever it might have been understood to be. And working backwards from some of the mythological sources which are available, I would suggest that this object lies in the region of Sagittarius.